Hi, welcome to my beautiful unschool life. I'm Erin, and this is my channel where I talk about all the challenges and successes of trying to build a sustainable life. So I built my own tiny house, I grow my own food, and I homeschool my kids. Today I want to talk about my plans for 2025. This will be my third year growing on this property, so I'm feeling a little bit more like I've got my feet under me. I'm feeling a little more confident. I've learned a lot of lessons the hard way, and I have a lot of things that I want to do differently this year and a lot of adjustments that I want to make. So this contraption here is meant to be a chicken tractor. We have raised meat chickens 2 years in a row now. This will be our third year. And I really would like for my chickens to be pastured. And to do that, we need to put them on the lawn. But we don't want them to ruin the lawn, so you need to move them every day or two. So in order to do that, we have this old trailer of Dawn's. This is Dawn's old trailer that had some holes in the floor. So he patched up the holes in the floor and he started to build a framework and a roof, but it took too long. He got called back to work. The chickens grew up, got butchered, and they're now in the freezer, and the chicken tractor isn't finished yet. So hopefully this year we can have this chicken tractor done by the time the chicks are big enough to need it. And they will be contained with electric poultry netting, and we will keep them out on the lawn and move them around. This is entirely new to me. I have never done this myself. I have zero experience with doing this. So this year we're only going to raise 12 chickens. Last year we had 24. The year before that we had 12. There's two reasons for that. One is there's just not a lot of space in my freezer. Two is I'm not entirely sure how things are going to go with the chicken tractor, so I want to ease my way in gently. We would like to eventually to sell chicken, but to do that you have to have them professionally butchered in a government inspected facility, and we haven't done that yet, and we probably won't do that this year. We'll maybe wait until next year to do that. I don't know. Maybe we'll do it this year. I haven't decided yet. Another thing that is on my to-do list for the chickens this year is in the fall, we insulated this coop on 3 of the 4 walls and the ceiling. It wasn't enough. So this year we want to insulate the 4th wall so that hopefully it'll be a little bit warmer in there. And I wouldn't mind also, this is the duck coop. We use it for chickens in the summer, but in the winter it's not warm enough. We move all the chickens into there. But we are expanding how many chickens we have this year. So that means that next winter we're probably going to need to use this coop as well. So I'm going to insulate this coop as well so that we can keep chickens in there as well as in there if necessary. Because for instance, this year we had problems with roosters fighting, and my poor favorite rooster, he never gets to eat because the other roosters won't let him. So it'll be nice to have other options for my poor darling rooster. Another thing on the to-do list for this year is we got these cages. I got quite a few of these cages from someone. They used to be mink cages, but I want to convert them into brooder cages for my hens. So the plan is to knock out the divider on 2 sides and give each hen 2 sections of the cage, so she'll have enough room in there for a nesting box and food and water, although these ones seem smaller, so maybe I'll knock out 3 sections. So there would be a nesting box and food and water area for the chicks to run. They would be in there until they're old enough to go out, and then we would open the side door so that they can all run in with the other chicken. That job is going to be one of the first things that I'm going to have to do because we're going to need those soon. We're planning on having hens on eggs as early as March 25th. so that they can be hatching in mid-April. That is the plan right now. We also have to butcher some of these ducks and one of my roosters. That's got to happen in the next couple of weeks. And this year, for the first time, we're going to raise turkeys. Not a lot, just I think I ordered 8 turkeys, 2 different breeds. So that is something exciting and new. The turkeys will just live in here with everybody else. So we're getting them as day olds from the local hatchery, and we're getting heritage breeds. So hopefully they're a little bit hardier than the broad-breasted turkeys that most people raise. I've been told that turkeys do better if they're raised by a hen, by a mama. So that is the reason I want to have eggs under hens by March 25th, because that way the eggs will hatch on the same day that the day-old turkeys arrive, and we can slip some turkeys underneath the mama hens, and hopefully the mama hens will raise the turkeys. I don't know if it'll work. Fingers crossed. The rabbits. Currently, we only have 3 rabbits. Our 2 female breeders live in this cage here, which has 2 nesting boxes at that end, a big open run, and 1 nesting box at that end. And our buck lives in this cage here, which has a nesting box there. These cages are great. They're fine. They work perfectly well. In the winter, they're less than ideal because they do fill up with snow. The rabbits like the snow, but it makes our job hard. As you can see, this is a pile of snow and poo that has piled up in the rabbit's cage over the winter. And because we had freezing temperatures for 2 months solid without a break, they just had to climb over Poo Mountain anytime they wanted to come and go. So that definitely was less than ideal. The other thing that we don't like about keeping the rabbits in those cages is it's hard for the kids to play with them. The kids really like to cuddle and play with the rabbits. Now, behind the girls' cage is that great big cage, and I built that one myself. And I built it in such a way that the kids could fit inside and play with the rabbits inside. However, it was designed to move, and it's too heavy to move. The wire on the floor is too large for the rabbits' feet. It's painful on their feet. There are mistakes with it. It's still a really handy thing to have around. When I have learned that when you have animals, you always need to make sure you have extra cages, because you need somewhere to put animals that are sick or animals that are causing trouble. Sometimes animals need to be separated. So extra cages is always handy. So it's a good thing I have that cage, but it's not really working for what it was designed for. So we have a different plan this year. Right back here in this back corner of the property behind my house, we are going to set up a hoop house. I posted on a local Facebook group to see if anybody had a hoop house that they were willing to sell me, and somebody offered to give me one for free. So last fall we went to their place and we disassembled it, and it has since been sitting here waiting for me to be able to put it together. I had not expected the winter that we got. I sort of thought we would be able to get to it during the winter, but there was just too much snow and it was too cold. So it's 20 feet by 10 feet. We're going to put it right here in this corner. We're going to set it up in such a way that the rabbits can be in cages, but they will also be safe to run around on the floor. And that way the kids can just hang out in there, and they can take the bunnies out of the cages and they can let them run around on the floor and they can cuddle with them. We can keep everybody in there together so we don't have to worry about snow getting into their cages. I'm not going to hold my breath for the water not freezing. The water will still freeze in the winter. So we will still have to lug water, and it'll be a much longer trip to lug water here all the way from Dawn's house than it is where they are now. But hopefully the payoff will be the girls will spend more time with the rabbits, and when they can spend more time with the rabbits, it won't be such a chore to take care of them. That is the hope. We will see. So Bunny Barn is also at the very top of things to do this spring. That's hopefully going to happen in the next couple of weeks, that I will start doing it. It's going to be a little complicated because I want to be able to keep out mice and rats and larger predators. So we're going to need to put, I'm going to put paving stones underneath the floor, and I'm going to wrap wire around everything, and there's going to be a tarp over the top, and I'm not exactly sure how it's going to work. So it's kind of a big job that I'm going to be making up as I go. But it's exciting, and hopefully it works. Other jobs on my to-do list. This greenhouse isn't really working for me right now. The idea behind this great big IBC tote that I painted black, the hope was that the sunshine would hit the black, it would heat the water would hold its heat overnight, and it would keep the greenhouse at a warm enough temperature that I could have seedlings in here without having alternative heat. It just doesn't do it. It's just not warm enough. We had to put a second layer of plastic on here to try and hold the warmth in a little bit more. Maybe it's too opaque. Maybe the angle of the sun here just isn't good enough. But it is warm, but it's not warm enough to prevent me needing another heating source. So I'm gonna need to have another heat source. And if I'm gonna have to have another heat source in here, then I might as well just take this thing out altogether and give myself the extra space, because it really takes up like a third of the space in this greenhouse. So this bad boy is going to be coming out, and I'm going to buy a few more shelves so that hopefully I can keep all of my seeds in this greenhouse. Last year I kept some in my house and some in Dawn's house and some in the greenhouse, and it was so much extra work having to move around from place to place to place to check on all the plants and water all the plants and shift things around. Too much hassle. I want to try and organize my life so that everything is just in this one place, and I will take the hit and pay to run an electric heater in here if that's what I need to do. Next. So this garden here was the first garden that Dawn tilled for me. I call this my big garden. This will be my 3rd year working with this garden, and I have never had a garden for 3 years in a row. So we're into new territory now. I have a few ideas of what I want to do differently this year. For instance, the tomatoes are just too crowded. So you can sort of see it here. This is one of the worst rows. The tomatoes grow very quickly. I prune every couple of weeks, but they just take over, and the rows just fill right up, and I can't even fit in between them. I overcrowd. That's what I do. I overcrowd. So the plan for this year is to take out every other trellis, and then in the space that is left when I take that trellis out, there'll still be a garden bed there, but I will grow things that don't like the heat, because they're going to be shaded by the tomatoes growing on the trellis to the south of them. So I can put lettuces there, or cabbage, or broccoli, or cauliflower, or kale, any of those things that don't like a lot of heat. This garden, I also, once the snow melts, which it should do, we're supposed to get 3 days of rain as of tomorrow. So this snow should all melt in the next 3 days. So once it's gone and once the ground has thawed, I never finished prepping this garden for the winter. I'm not used to. This winter took everyone by surprise. We were not expecting this much snow. We were not expecting it to last. So usually I have all winter to prep the garden. And so this garden, I only got 1/3 of the way done. So I need to finish prepping this garden. So part of that will be over there. So right there, there's a whole bunch of straw underneath that pile of snow. So I'll bring that straw in and cover all the rows with it. That's my mulch. I'm going to just tidy up the beds, and that's a big job that I have to do in the next couple of weeks. I won't start planting in here. Actually, some things I will probably start planting as soon as the ground is soft. So like radishes and lettuces and peas and that sort of thing, I'll plant right away. But most things won't be going in here until the end of May. So I have time. That's still what, 2 months away. 2.5 months away, almost 3 months away. So the big garden, there won't be a lot of changes to the big garden. Just trying to create a little bit more space. Now, if I'm taking out 2 entire rows of tomato trellises, where will I put all of the tomatoes? I can show you. They're gonna go in the little garden. So the little garden Dawn just tilled for me last spring. So it's only had 1 year. And it was completely and utterly overrun with bindweed and squash vine borers. They just destroyed my garden. So not that much stuff grew in this garden because it just had such a bad year. So this is my little garden. First of all, I'm going to need to fix the fence. It got taken down by the snow, but that's not really a big deal. It didn't get ripped, it just got taken down. This garden I also did not get prepped in time for winter, but I wasn't even really sure what I was going to do with this garden, so I didn't really know how to prep it. But I have decided that I'm going to keep it mostly the way it is. So what I did back here this year, this area here, you can sort of see them. I mounded into 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of 4 mounds. And I planted squash in those mounds, but I've never grown squash all together like this, and it was just like a buffet for the squash vine borers, and they just killed everything. I didn't get any squash from my garden last year. So this year I'm not gonna put the squash here. I'm gonna put tomatoes here. I'm gonna try putting a post in every single mound and just growing the tomatoes up individual T-posts. And then I'll still have something at the bottom like a basil or maybe some melons, or I might have occasional squashes in here. I'm gonna also grow a lot of marigolds this year. It's my effort to try and beat the squash vine borers. I'm gonna grow a whole lot of marigolds. And then the front section here, this is where I had really bad bindweed everywhere. It was really overwhelming. Now I've been told that bindweed really likes freshly tilled soil, and this soil was freshly tilled last year, like it was a brand new garden. And I have no plans to till this year. I do no dig method, so hopefully the bindweed will be better this year, but I'm not holding my breath. I'm going to mulch it really heavily. I've got that straw that we got, so I'm going to put a lot of straw on there. Hopefully that makes a difference. My main mission in this garden is to just try and get it to produce some food, because it was only maybe a third of it was productive last year, and that was a bit frustrating and disappointing. So that's the big garden and the little garden. Next, let's check out my perennial garden. So my perennial garden, we only just planted in the fall. We were gifted some gooseberries and some black currants and some red currants and some elderberry and some pawpaws. So those were all planted over here. There's a whole row that's been tilled along here, and it's got all of those things that we brought home. Now I'm expecting a significant number of those to not have survived the transplant. It was a bit of a messy transplant, and plants just don't like to be moved in general. So I have quite a few new perennial things that I want to grow. I don't think I'm gonna have to till extra length on either of the ends. I'm just gonna assume that a few things are gonna die, and I'll fill their spaces with the stuff that I just bought. It's about 4 feet wide, and so the plants that are there aren't gonna need the full 4 feet, at least not this year. So along the back, I'm going to plant sunflowers and Mexican sunflowers. Underneath the trees and the bushes, I'm going to plant lemon balm and let that just spread all over the place. I can never have enough lemon balm. I've also got some peppermint coming. I'll put that in there too. And then I'm going to put in some flowers in there as well. I'm going to put in some poppies and a few other things that would reseed themselves year after year, so that in theory this area will just sort of be pretty and wild. Maybe some people don't think that wild is pretty, but I think that wild is very pretty. So now I'm going to take you to check out my flower garden. So my flower garden did terribly last year. I don't have a lot of experience growing flowers. I'm much more comfortable with the vegetables. but it was something that Don really wanted. And if he wants to till me a garden, I'm gonna fill it. So that's basically what happened. He tilled me a garden and he bought a lot of tulip bulbs. And the tulip bulbs did wonderfully. Oh, wind over here. The wind is just coming off that field. There's no trees blocking the wind. Okay, so my flower garden is along here. You can't really see it very well, but it sort of curves like a river. So at this end, there were tulips, and the tulips did really, really well. But I also planted a whole bunch of perennials at this end. I put in peonies, I put in a dahlia that just died immediately, some lavender that did quite well. So the first half of the garden we're trying to fill with perennials, and then the second half of the garden we planted with annuals. But nothing did well. The perennials did not do well. The annuals did not do well. Part of the problem is that it's a bit shaded here. They still get 6 hours of sunlight, but maybe that wasn't enough. Part of the problem might be that we did not add any fertilizer to the soil. The 2 veggie beds that I have, I filled with aged cow manure, so they did quite well. But the flower garden, I didn't put any manure in that. We just tilled it and planted it and left it at that. So last summer and into the fall, I started filling it with rabbit manure and straw. So hopefully that will make a difference and it will do better this year. But I don't know. I'm not going to hold my breath. So on the end where the perennials are planted, where the tulip bulbs are already in, there's not a lot I can do. But the other end where I planted the annuals, I'm considering toying with using landscape fabric. I've never really used landscape fabric, but I'm wondering if a lot of the flower growers use it. They use it to keep the weeds down. They use it to add heat to the soil, to keep things warm and to keep the moisture in. So I don't know, I might try that. We'll see how it goes. And then the final garden mission that I have is right here by my house. I want to build an herb garden where everything is in pots. I also have these planter boxes that Dawn and I built. I have 4 planter boxes. One of them is here and 3 of them are on the other side. So I want to bring them all over to this side. This rabbit cage will be leaving. It will be going into the bunny barn. So this whole area in front of my house and beside the garden and under this tree and along that fence line, I'm just going to fill the whole thing with herbs, medicinal herbs and flowers in pots. I've got a few pots already and I've got a bird bath. I want to bring in some stumps for seeding and to create levels for the different pots. I want it to be a bit like a cottage garden, but above ground, not in the ground. An above ground cottage garden. That's sort of what I'm picturing there. I've got a lot of herbs and some of them can survive the winter and some of them can't. So putting them in pots means I'll be able to bring them in the house in the winter. I won't be able to keep them alive in the greenhouse. The greenhouse freezes solid in the winter, as we learned this year. So that is the 5th. That's the 5th garden that I will be maintaining this summer if it all works out. I had people give me lots and lots of pots, so that's not a problem. I'll just need to buy soil. It shouldn't really be that difficult to establish it. Fingers crossed. Now, if that sounded like a lot of work for a single woman who's homeschooling her own children, I haven't even gotten to the biggest mission that I would like to take on this summer, and that is I want to make some progress on my house. So everything that you see here was built in the first 7 months. The exterior took me 3 months. The interior took me, let's see, all of June, August, September, October. So 4.5 months. The exterior took me 4.5 months. The interior took me about 2.5 months. And I haven't really done anything since then because I ended up having to move my house and start my farm from scratch and start a new business from scratch. So everything has been really very much about the house is livable, it's good enough, so I sort of put it on the back burner and I focused on the garden and I focused on the animals and I focused on my kids and I focused on my health. And now that I feel like I got my feet under me again, I really want to work on the house. So the first thing we need to do is put on the siding. I don't want to put on the siding. I feel zero motivation whatsoever to put on the siding, but the siding needs to go on before I can do any of the other projects. So the first thing on the list is siding. The second thing on the list is to try and solve the problems of my solar panels, because the batteries are gonna die if I don't get them going. So we need to figure out my electrical system. I've been given some really good suggestions by a viewer that I think might have solved the problem, but I haven't actually tried it yet. So that's the first step, is to try and see if my electrical system works. If my electrical system works, then we can put up the solar panels and get that going. I'll need to buy a generator, so that's a pretty substantial expense. But if I can have electricity, then I can have a fridge. And that's really what I want more than anything, is a fridge. Because right now, anything that needs to be kept in a fridge, I have to keep in my boyfriend's Don's house way over there. And if I forget something, I have to walk back and forth. I swear, a dozen times a day I'm walking back and forth because I've forgotten things. So getting a fridge is something that I really want to do. The next big project after siding and the solar panels is I want to put on a front porch and a back porch. And the back porch will have a roof, and it can be fully enclosed in the winter. And that's where I will keep my fridge, and I will also keep some of my food preserves on the back porch. A big reason that I want a back porch is my roof drips. So every time you go in and out of the door, you get water down the back of your neck. It's just the most horrible feeling. And then the third addition that we need to build onto the exterior of my house is this is the girls' bedroom. They don't sleep in their bedroom, they sleep in my bedroom, but I want them to sleep in their bedroom. However, it is not safe for them to sleep in their bedroom because it does not have a fire escape. And since I heat with a wood stove, a fire escape is a really important thing. So building the girls their fire escape is also on the list to do this summer. The original plan was to put a bit of a deck there, to put a rock climbing wall and a slide. But I've also been toying with maybe putting in a zip line instead of a slide, because that seems a lot easier and a lot cheaper. It's just a matter of figuring out where to run the zip line to, because it would be really natural to run the zip line over to this old pear tree here, except that this is where I'm going to put the bunny barn. So I have conflicting fantasies about what to do with this space. I'm going to need to put some deep thought into what I want to do and how I want to handle it. So that is all the exterior work. Let me tell you about what we want to do on the interior. So there are two projects for the interior that I would really like to work on. The first one is pretty simple, my kitchen countertop. It is just unfinished plywood. And unfinished plywood is, it's not particularly safe to have unfinished plywood in your house because it off-gases chemicals. But also it's just a pain in the neck because you can see how rough this surface is. So for me, if there's crumbs all over the kitchen counter, I clean it with a dustpan and brush. I never prepare anything directly on this counter. I always use a cutting board or plates or whatever. So in that sense, it's not really a problem, but it would be really nice to have an actual countertop. So I'm just going to get something cheap, some sort of cheap like stick-on laminate that I can put on here. Nothing fancy. Nothing in my house is fancy. So that is the first simple job. Now, the second job that is a little more complicated is I want to paint everything. The girls are going to be going away for a big chunk of time this summer. So my plan is to take everything out, to wipe down all the surfaces and clean everything, and to paint. I want to paint the ceiling. I would like to make it white in between the rafters and paint the rafters with a dark brown stain to give it sort of a cottagey kind of feel. I would like to, I want to paint the floors white all the way across. I have toyed with a few different kinds of flooring, and I've decided that really for me, the simplest is the best. So I'm just going to paint it. I'm also going to, I want to try and put some trim on the, well, put some beadboard here and put some trim on all the edges. Anywhere where there's big cracks in the beadboard, I want to fill that with caulking. Along there, I'd like to put some trim. And then I'm going to repaint everything white. And the reason I'm going to repaint everything white is because I get a lot of flies in my house. And what the flies have done to my walls is covered it with fly dirt. That, ladies and gentlemen, is all fly poo. And it's everywhere, and it's really gross. So my plan is, hopefully, in theory, to paint it with an oil-based paint that can be wiped with a cloth, so that I can't do anything about the flies. I don't know how to keep them from coming into my house. I just have to accept that that's a fact of my life. But what I can do is make it really easy to wash their poo off. And that's the best approach that I have. So that's the walls and the ceilings, to paint those white with an oil-based paint. The floors, we will just paint them white, but the girls have a fantasy of painting it all to look like a forest. So for instance, my stairs there, we're going to paint a waterfall on them. And then we're going to paint a river that comes across this floor here and flows down across and out underneath the sink. That's the idea, to have the river flow underneath the sink. And then the girls want to turn their staircase into a rainbow, and the white bits will be the clouds. And then they want to paint their room to look like Unicorn Land with a volcano. So I'm going to try, while the girls are away, to do the base coat, to paint everything white, to make everything nice and clean. I'm going to take everything out of the house and put it in like a tent in the backyard and just make this look as nice as I possibly can over the 2 weeks that they're gone. And then when they come back, then we'll do the pretty painting. We'll paint the decorations. So they want to put sort of vines up things, and I'm not really sure about whether what kind of paint we will use to do the decorating, the waterfall and the leaves and so on and so forth, because if I'm using an oil-based paint, that means things are going to wash off of that quite easily. So I'm not sure. I haven't nailed out the details, but this isn't going to be happening until July and August. So I've got a lot of time to research the plan for that. And that's a big job. Just putting in the trim and filling in all the gaps and doing the finishes, that's a big job. You will have noticed that the tile here in front of the fireplace has loads of cracks in it. I knew when I did it that I wasn't doing it properly and that it would get cracks in it. So ta-da! Cracks. I don't have it in me to retile this year. So what I might just do is put some sort of edging on this to prevent it from cracking more, as well as along this edge here. Do something there to make it look a little bit tidier and to clean that up a little bit and to make it a little less vulnerable to being cracked. But the tile is staying for now. That is not really on my agenda. The other thing that I probably should fix this year, I'm not sure how much of a priority is this door over here. This door over here, I needed to create a short door. And rather than cut a chunk off of the bottom, I cut a chunk off of the middle. So the door is not hinged very well, and it's a little bit rough. I had a really highly critical viewer comment that the door was putting my children's lives in danger, and I haven't quite figured out how. But if I do, then maybe the door will become higher on my priority list. But right now, it's working perfectly fine. Uh, yeah. Also, I want to put a banister on this staircase here. It's kind of dangerous when the kids come out there. If they were to lose their balance, they'd hit their heads on the wood stove. So that's been on the to-do list for quite a while. Hopefully it will get done finally this year. So that's it. That is the plan that I have for what I would like to do in 2025. It's hardly anything. I'm sure I'll have no problem at all accomplishing everything on that checklist. I look forward to checking in again with this video in December to see how well I did. And I just want to add, I'm just loving, now that the warm weather is here, I love seeing my birds out, and they're so happy to be on grass again. It's crazy to think how different this is all going to look in just a month or two. I love living in a country where we have 4 proper seasons. It's kind of magical. Anyways, thanks for hanging out with me. It's a pleasure as always. Take care. See you next time.
I've said it many times, I know I would change my ways, I know for sure.